Albie, it's wonderful to speak with you again, all the way from Cape Town. Thank you so much for taking the time.
It's a great pleasure. I know it's morning your time, it's evening our time.
My colleagues and I were in South Africa with you a year ago in Cape Town, and your work and your contributions to civil rights, human rights, equality in South Africa were such an inspiration to me that when I came home and my husband asked me, "How was your trip to South Africa?" I said to him, other than the birth of our children, the time that I spent with Albie Sachs was amongst the most profound 90 minutes of my life. You just provided such a wonderful arc of what it takes to get to progress and to achieve our goals as humanity. And so when the opportunity came up for us to think about how we share that with our grantee partners, I said, there's no better person on the earth at this moment that we should talk to about inspiration and collaboration and hope and struggle than Albie Sachs. So thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Well, we had a wonderful visit from Waverley. You had an energy and an enthusiasm, a focus and openness that was very, very special. So I jumped at the opportunity.
Good. Well, thank you. So here's where I want to start. You know, your life's work has been really rooted in justice and human rights. And I'm wondering how you think about climate justice work as being related to issues of justice and human rights struggle. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's struggle. And it requires thoughtfulness. It requires an emancipatory vision. It requires finding partners. It requires enlarging the number of people on your side and reducing the number of people who are resisting. What came through to me so powerfully was for the African community in South Africa, having been dispossessed from the earth was more than just losing an economic access. It was being dispossessed from the ancestry, from the graves, from the habitats, from the rivers, from the barks, from the trees, from that soil that was so important for being, for culture, for that sense of belonging. The answer to that was a common love for the land. Could be a very powerful unifying feature in South Africa. And the environment could be something that could bring us together, not in a very facile way, simply we all have to look after our environment together, but in a very deep and profound way, reconnecting with nature could be a very important way of reconnecting with our humanity.
It strikes me that one of the challenges that I actually would put at the feet of environmentalists is that they began the conversation about climate activism by starting with things that weren't immediate for people. They started with rhinos, they started with butterflies or with ants, or even with pollution. And I have wagered that if the climate struggle had started with making the case that the reason that a mother's child has asthma, or that the reason that your spouse is sick with cancer is because they've worked in a coal mine, then this struggle would be in a very, very different place today. To center this work and to encourage people to take action, it really means making it very personal in one's own life.
Right. So I think it's always important to project the moral issue. And if people can interiorize the value of the importance of the role that they can contribute, I think that that's very valuable. And then often that's very local. In South Africa, sadly, we have horrible areas of foul water. We have areas of rubbish dumps. We have areas of toxic fumes. And these have to be denounced and exposed, and there have to be common attempts to deal with those things, because they don't only affect the poor people living in those areas, they affect the whole neighborhood, and they have heavy social costs and health costs.
Can you share an example from your career where you think collaboration was the key to success? in terms of seeking out transformative outcomes that related to kind of a human rights struggle?
What the South African environmental people have developed under some very thoughtful leadership is this notion of the just transition. And the just transition means progressive closing down of coal mines, but also progressive retraining of the coal miners and transformation of the rural communities that have been dependent on those mines. And massive investment is required to do that. Otherwise, they bear the burden of dealing with climate change, the poor who are already disadvantaged. And we've got some international support, but not nearly enough. And this would be important throughout what's called the South. And South Africa has come up with very, very meaningful proposals of a just transition over time that would massively contribute towards the reduction of coal mining and the closing down of the coal mines. It goes together with renewable energy and massive advances in that way. But it's not enough to have renewable energy and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of coal miners, black coal miners, being thrown out of work.
What does it take, though, to get to a just transition? And I'm wondering in particular if you see any parallels in the struggle to end apartheid in South Africa and the struggle to bring about a just transition in South Africa.
It's going to be so important to invest in retraining, in ensuring the progressive closing down of the coal mines is accompanied by progressive retraining of the mine workers and the not only reskilling, but creating new communities that not only benefit from renewable energy, but benefit from other projects that will be useful in those particular areas. And this requires a change of mindset as far as the environmentalists are concerned, to find meaningful ways of handling that transition. And I think South Africa in that way could be contributing something to the world.
You know, when you were working on the Constitution, what it meant in terms of ensuring that that collaboration had to have been a key part of that experience. And I'm wondering if there are any lessons that you have around architecting that Constitution that people who are involved in climate struggle should be carrying with them as they're thinking about how do we save people and save the planet.
So you've got to look for ways of finding common ground. We couldn't have common ground on apartheid and equality. It had to be non-racial, and we afterwards added non-sexist. But that provided, once you've got agreement on core principles, you can be very flexible on what we call the right to be different and that diversity. And we found that was very important. We also found there were people we used to call them the enemy. And then making some progress, we call them the regime. And we're making some more progress, we call them the bloody government. And finally, we now leading, we call them the other side. We found it was very important not to drive people into a corner where there's nothing left for them. They had to feel there's a place for us in the new South Africa. And these guarantees are guarantees equally for everybody. And there's a future for us. There's a future for us with our language, Afrikaans language, that had been the language of oppression, will now have a new future, not as the language of oppression, but the language of a very large section of the population. We're not going to be denied our religious beliefs. We can carry on. And clearly, when it comes to the question of climate, you don't have to be tolerant of people who deny climate damage, the threat to their views, but you do have to be flexible and open to the people whose lives are going to be altered by climate change in ways that could be very disruptive to them, and not simply appeal to their good nature and their future of their children, and to negotiate, to talk. And this is where the just transition becomes so important.
I know we're coming to the end of our time together, And I recall that when we met with you a year ago, we talked about things that we saw that we thought were hopeful. We talked about things that we saw that we thought were difficult and were going to be persistent challenges. And I was struck at that moment that even though not every dream that you have for the country of South Africa has been realized, that you are still hopeful. And so my question for you is, what continues to give you hope in light of, what can be difficult politics, shrinking civil society, corruption in certain areas? What gives you hope?
We've now got a government of national unity, and it's bringing new people on board and new outlooks. That's giving a lot of people hope. But my hope comes from basically our democracy is actually working as informal democratic terms. When the ANC got well below 50%, it's not the governing party anymore. It stepped down. Now, that hasn't happened in neighboring countries where people are claiming elections are rigged. Our elections are not rigged. We have a very open society. We have great investigative journalists. We have a lively population. Our people are not downtrodden. They speak their minds. There's beautiful culture emerging, great criticism, lively student population. There's a lot of positive energy in South Africa, and people speak out very openly. Now, I've lived under apartheid, where our books were banned. My books were banned, where people were thrown into jail without a warrant, where people were pushed off their land without any justification, simply based on race. The transformation from that has been huge. It hasn't gone nearly far enough. We still have massive inequality, still based on race. We still have huge unemployment. There's so many things that are unacceptable, but we know about those things. And that's what gives me positive energy. And it's basically because our constitution in that sense is working. As I think I mentioned, we're not a fair society, we're not a safe society, but we're an open society. And that means plenty.
There's no better note to end on. Albie Sachs, thank you so much for your wisdom, for your courage, for your commitment, and for your insights into how we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you.